everybody, and welcome to the show. The Atheist Experience is live February 16th, 2003. I'm your host, Martin Wagner, my co-host, Ashley Perrien, as always. This show is sponsored by Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. ACA holds weekly meetings every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. at Hot Jumbo Bagels. Except for, and that's located downtown, at 307 West 5th Street between Guadalupe and Lavaca, except for the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series in the Mayor Room of the Austin History Center at 9th and Guadalupe. Our next scheduled lecture time is March the 2nd, and are we having a speaker, or is that elections?
No, it's not elections.
Okay.
March, I believe, is Texas History Month or something like that.
Okay.
And so we're trying to find someone to talk about that.
Okay. Like the Freethinkers or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
we've got a couple people. We had somebody lined up, and then they couldn't do it for some reason. So
okay.
We're asking around.
Okay. Well, as soon as we know, we'll tell you, and it'll be on the website and all the rest of it. Okay. Other ACA happy fun events include Godless Gamers, which takes place every Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. at the home of Russell and Virginia Glasser, and Atheist Happy Hour, which is a Thursday evening event, starts about 7:30. People trickle in all evening to Antonio's Tex-Mex at near the intersection of Interstate 35 and Highway 183. That's a fun evening event, food, and look for the table of loud talking atheists, and you'll find us. Okay. The Nonprofits, which is our weekly internet radio show hosted by Jeff D., is currently on hiatus. However, you can visit our website at www.atheist-community.org, click on the radio page, and you can stream the past dozen or so episodes that they recorded in MP3 format. We still no plans, still no announcement as to when the live broadcast will resume, but I'm sure when Jeff and Russell and the rest of the team are good and ready, they will do it. The University Atheists and Agnostics has begun its second semester at the University of Texas at Austin. This is a registered UT student organization put together by our very own Charles Tavaney. We're awful proud of him because it has met with a great deal of success, and they have meetings every Friday afternoon at 4:30 in HRH 3.102A. That's Rainey Hall, and it's Fridays not at 4:30. I'm sorry, at 4. Fridays at 4 p.m., and the email address in order to get more information is uaa@mail.utexas.edu. If you are a student or faculty member at UT Austin, check them out. That's Atheist Agnostic Group for you. First really successful one ever. And so great. Okay, let me see. I think that's just about it for the early announcements. Let's see. What did I cover? Just to say that April 18th through the 20th, we don't have a title for this, but that's okay, not necessary. You can go to our website at upcoming events at the calendar page, and there is the Atheist Alliance Convention taking place in mid-April in Tampa, Florida, for folks who are keen to travel, and their guests are going to be none other than James Randi and Richard Dawkins.
Yeah.
Be sweet.
That would be pretty good.
But at our website on the calendar page, you'll find a listing for that, and then there's a link to info if you'd care to. I'd love to. Don't think I can, but boy howdy, that'd be a heck of a conference.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that does it for announcements. For more information about the ACA, you can visit our fine website at atheist-community.org. And now I do believe it is time for the news. Is it not, Mr. Perrien? Yeah.
All right.
Happening in the world.
We'll start off with the innocuous stuff, and we'll get to the inflammatory fun later.
Oh boy. This is going to be.
It's gonna have a.
This is going to be a rockin' show today, I think.
Okay, first one. Scientists replaced human stem cell genes. These are some scientists on Sunday say they had, for the first time, genetically manipulated human stem cells. A first step toward making the body's so-called master cells into a useful tool. Using the method that made laboratory mouse so valuable to genetic researchers, the team at the University of Wisconsin deleted a disease gene from human embryonic stem cells. They now have a way to help control how the cells develop so they can direct them to become brain tissue or perhaps heart cells or pancreatic cells.
Beautiful.
So yes, they can actually go into cells now, muck around with them.
Yeah.
Take out certain genes and such. And
this will be how we eradicate Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and all the rest of it.
Exactly.
From the face of the earth. That's terrific. Cancer could very well be dealt with, you know?
Yeah. It's a possibility, yes. That would probably be a little more complex than some of the other ones.
Yeah. But definitely like genetic degenerative diseases.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Be hit.
The method could also be used to create universal donor batches or cell lines of cells. The genes that causes the body's immune system to reject foreign tissue could be removed. You could transplant this line into any patient.
Wow.
And so that could bypass the need for any kind of therapeutic cloning, which everybody is all up in arms about. So.
Well, good. I mean, again, it would be an easier way to do it.
Yes.
It wouldn't mean therapeutic cloning is immoral or invalid, but it would just be, I mean, if there's easier ways to do things, we should always pick the easiest way.
Yeah.
That leads to the most help. That's terrific. Of course, I'm sure that someone somewhere will find some reason to be outraged and against this.
Most likely. It still deals with human cells, so somebody can flip.
Yeah.
But oh well. So.
If it's God's will that I get Alzheimer's, then that's that's
then
the way it is.
Fine. So okay, so that's that one. Next one. This is in Iowa. Prison ministry program in Iowa. Most inmates live in this certain Iowa's Newton Correctional Facility. Live 3 to a cell and have no privacy, even when they use the toilet. But if they agree to immerse themselves in Bible study and the transforming love of Jesus Christ, they are given keys to their cells, private bathrooms, free phone calls, even access to big screen TVs.
Whoa!
Yep. This is called the Interchange Freedom Initiative. It's run by evangelist Charles Colson.
Mr. Former Watergate criminal Chuck Colson? That guy?
Very possible. I have no idea.
Mr. I need imagery rehabilitation. I'll become a fundamentalist Christian. Chuck Colson? That guy?
This program is being touted by Bush as being, this is what we need our faith-based initiatives for.
Oh, what, to give...
This is the kind of things that he is promoting.
Yeah, all the prisoner has to do is say, I'm a Christian now, and he suddenly gets a key to his cell?
Yep. Memorize a few lines in this thing, and you get...
That's not faith-based initiative. That's just... Stupidity.
So...
It's like... the son of Sam right now, David Berkowitz, who went on this, the big killing spree.
Yeah.
Okay. He's done the jailhouse conversion thing. Okay. Any criminal profiler, any law enforcement professional will tell you, look, these psychos get in there and they do the jailhouse conversions because they think it will help them on parole.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if Bush is touting this as a good thing, he's basically saying, yeah, we can just let serial killers now just walk all around and be forgiven and give them keys to their cells simply because they say, oh, I'm a Christian now.
Yep.
That is insane.
Yep. They're let out at night. They can, at nighttime in their cells, they can get out.
Would you, Mr. Bush,
go to their private bathrooms and watch their big screen TVs and football games.
Yeah, and why don't you let them date Jenna while you're at it, George W. Yeah,
So.
What an idiot. What a complete idiot. I mean...
Yep, he cited it, Bush, during his presidential campaign, cited it as the kind of faith-based program he wants to see spread across the country.
But that's not anything rehabilitative. That's just doing that's giving somebody special dispensation, okay, simply for saying they're Christian.
Yep.
And that's just giving them a special reward. All you have to do, that doesn't have any rehabilitative process at all.
Bible class.
That's just encouraging people to lie, okay, and pretend to be something to get the favor that they want.
Yeah.
This is why the whole faith-based initiative is being attacked by critics, because it's not really, the only thing it's an initiative for is to be a religious entitlements program. Yeah. It's giving preferential treatment to people just who simply say, I'm religious, therefore I deserve better treatment than everyone else. I'm a Christian, so I deserve better treatment than non-Christians. Yeah. Just for being Christian. Something like this.
How could they ever promote this as being one of the faith-based initiatives?
Because they're stupid.
Because you can't, according to the laws, you can't give money to things that are strictly religious. You have to give it to the secular portion. There is no secular portion to this at all.
Right. This is just people saying, I'm going to do Bible study now and carry a Bible around and quote a few verses and make sure that I'm seen praying when I need to be, and then I get a key to my cell.
Yep.
This astonishes me. Well, now I hadn't heard about this one, but I had heard about something in Orange County, Florida, that was similar to this. that has now been, Orange County has taken it away. Because what happened was, in the Orange County, I think it was the county jail system right there, a Muslim prisoner complained because in his prison, right, the Christian prisoners were getting all of these special favors.
Yep. That he can't get because of his
religion. He can't get because of being Muslim. And this was clearly a flagrant violation, not only of church-state separation, but it was obvious favoritism towards Christianity over other faiths. Yeah. And he brought a case, and actually, and that's been shot down in Florida.
Well, they do have a case going against this one also.
Well, they better.
Filed by the Washington-based advocacy group, Americans United for Separation of Church and State.
They better.
Challenge the constitutionality. So
why just challenge the basic intelligence of it? Giving a prisoner a key to his own cell?
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yep. Why not just give him a gun belt like the guards, too, while you're at it? Why not give him, just whatever he wants?
Yep. Let him out. You promise to be good now, don't you?
And look, everybody was outraged a few years ago, right, before he died, when the guy, scumbag Richard Speck, who was a serial killer, like, from way back in the 50s, right?
Yeah.
Been in prison for a long time. And then video emerged of him in his cells, right, basically having these wild cocaine-fueled sex orgies with his other prisoner male partners. Yeah. And, basically boasting that, he's, ever since he's been in prison, he's been having the time of his life. And this was, this was exposed as being, this is a horrible failure of our jail system when some scumbag like this can get to have these cocaine-fueled sex orgies when he's supposed to be doing hard time and being punished, for his crimes. Yeah. But now this is like just as bad, but on the opposite end of the spectrum. Yeah. Now all Richard Speck would have to do today would be to just tote around a Bible.
Yep. Learn a couple of verses, and there you go.
And he gets the run of the place.
So
that's all he has to do.
Yep.
That is really, really outrageous. And,
only thing I do mention here, people in this program, which was established in Texas in 1997, have a repeat offender rate of only 8%, as compared to the general recidivism rate of over 50% and a control group rate of 20%. Now, I'd like to know what that general 50 and control of 20.
Yeah, the control group rate.
Yeah, but the control group would be the general, wouldn't it?
Well, a control group, I guess, would be, well, let me see. The control group would be the ones that
aren't going through the program.
Yeah.
Which would be the general.
But wait, did they do a deliberate experiment on this? Did they, are they just, if they're saying they had a control group, if they didn't set up a deliberate experiment, all they could do would be compare the recidivism rates to the guys who
didn't go through
it. Yeah. But at the same time, right? Most prisoners, is this like some big federal prison where the really bad guys are, or is it just like a regular prison?
I would hope that this is one of those minimum security places.
Yeah, it couldn't possibly be maximum security if they're giving them keys to their freaking cells. But still, okay.
Iowa's Newton Correctional Facility, it doesn't say.
Most people who get in prison for minor infractions, right, aren't these horrible, hardened career criminals.
Of course.
Okay, they're not the Richard Specks of the world. Yeah. They're not the Ted Bundys of the world. They're guys who are maybe caught with a dime bag.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they get in prison and they're like, whoa, this is a hellhole. I don't want my life going that way.
Yeah.
So, okay, maybe some of these guys are sincere in adopting their faith and and using that as a way to maybe try to be better guys. Yeah. But that doesn't change the whole outrageousness of the fact that all you have to do now is proclaim that you're Christian, and you suddenly get all these favors in the prison that other guys aren't getting.
Yeah.
Which is clearly designed in such a way to make people say, oh, well, this dude who's carrying around the Bible is jangling keys on his finger, and I'm not. I better carry a Bible too. That's what it's all for. It's just crazy. I just can't conceive of the rationale behind it.
Yep. Well, it's time to start trying.
Unless there's an actual deluded belief. Okay. Yeah. That's, this is actually doing something positive.
I have no idea. Yeah. But that's just idiotic in the extreme. Okay, next one. I had the story last week about Europe and their new constitution that they're trying to draft.
Oh, their secular constitution.
Exactly. There was no mention of God in it, despite some protests. But
well, there's no mention of God in our constitution.
Yeah, the year of our Lord.
The year of our Lord. That's it. But that's but there's nothing that says God is our heavenly Father or anything like that. Yeah. There's no quotes from the Bible.
Yeah. So, well, this is a U.S. editorialist, Tom Marsfield, who says, Europe's past moral greatness is now a mere memory. It's hard to believe that our continental cousins were once immortalized in these words by Anglo-French historian Hilaire Bleco. Europe is the faith, and the faith is Europe.
What past moral greatness? Does he give specific examples of this alleged past moral greatness?
No, just a general. General. Ooh, they're so nice.
Yeah. Well, not to say that there hasn't been like moral greatness emerging from European history. There's been a lot of it.
Of course.
Okay. But still, Yeah. I'll have more to say on that in a minute, I'm sure.
As if to punctuate this arduous loss, the Czech parliamentarian said mentioning God in any EU charter was a stupid idea that will only provoke disagreements. There should be no direct link to religion at all. Now, while that may be a bit harsh in its lingo, I will agree with his sentiment.
What do you mean? Yeah.
Not having religion in the document is a good thing. It should not be there.
Insofar as people should not be made to think.
Of course.
Again, that belief in God is what is required of you to be a good citizen.
Of course.
That should be the private choice of individual citizens.
Of course.
And the government shouldn't even imply.
Yeah.
And again, it's a sticky enough problem, again, in our country where we just have our one constitution and our one government.
Yeah.
But when you have something like the EU that has 13 nations and all these separate cultures that they're trying to draw together, how could you possibly say, let's affiliate ourselves with one belief system and make that a requirement of... Or make that just a general EU endorsement of that one religious point of view.
Yeah. Well, he goes on to say, cross the big pond and you now discover a fully transitioned post-Christian secular society.
Woo-hoo.
Just as it is here in virtually all of our government-funded institutions. Now, I would like you to remember the past story that I just read.
Except for the ones where they're trying to sneak in all this, this entitlements to religion.
Yeah. European Christianity has been supplanted by the aforementioned leftist religion du jour, secular humanism. Secular is an adjective meaning concerning those not members of the clergy. Humanism is a noun meaning an outlook or philosophy that advocates human rather than religious values. In essence, man has replaced God as the center of attention.
Well, why man should be walking around with his center of attention being this invisible imaginary friend that no one ever saw is, I think a legitimate point. And
what else?
And we've been over it countless times. There are numerous rational bases for having, a strong system of laws and ethics.
Yeah. Not according to him, though. Around 1300 BC, Moses hiked off Mount Sinai with 10 commandments in hand.
According to myth.
Of course. Written in stone on 2 tablets, the law ascribed in those immortal words is the basis of all Western justice to this day. Where do
they get that delusion? I'll never know.
And I like how they even point this out. The first and third commandments are daunting, kind of a do it or else quality in the writing. Mm-hmm. Paraphrase, they read 1, thou shalt have no other gods before me, and 3, don't you dare let anything else replace me as God.
Yeah, so it's threats.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, Europe now questions God's relevance. If I were Europe, I'd be far more concerned with God questioning my relevance.
Well, you know what? Prove your God exists first, and then I'll worry about.
Concerned about.
Then I'll worry about him questioning my relevance.
Yeah, and going on to say that.
Because Mr. Tom Marsland, I think that you should be concerned with the invisible 7-foot-tall bunny rabbit living under my bed questioning your relevance.
Yep. And going on. Again, this is somebody that lives in this country. Frankly, I'd like to believe in man's goodness, but don't.
Of course not. He's a Christian.
Yeah.
What is at the root of Christianity? This misanthropic idea that we're all evil, unredeemable sinners.
So, as attractive as the idea appears, there's no evidence for it when history's record is accessed. The abbreviated list of secular humanist failures in the past century have included the former USSR, Communist China, Hitler, Castro, Central American communism, Japanese imperialism, and Mussolini. So he lists all the blights in history.
Yeah, and not to mention, of course, setting aside the fact that Hitler was not a secular man by any stretch of the imagination.
Very religious.
Yeah, he was. He basically thought he was God. You know, and he was deeply religious. Yeah. The entire Third Reich was mired in this weird mysticism.
Yeah.
But even then, okay, fine. So And even though there's nothing particularly humanistic about communism, actually.
Yeah.
And Stalin was no humanist because he was going around killing everybody who didn't agree with him. This guy was a power lust crazed lunatic.
Yeah.
And the fact that he didn't happen to believe in God I'm sure he didn't happen to believe in leprechauns either. Stalinist didn't become a power crazed murderous lunatic because of the fact he didn't believe in leprechauns.
Yeah.
So it's again, it's a completely out of left field analogy. But still, okay, let's say the secularists have Castro. Fine. Well, the church has witch burnings.
Yep.
The church has numerous wars under, the Crusades.
Yep.
The church has the Spanish Inquisition.
Yep.
The church has executing heretics.
Yep.
All through the middle, for just one example out of many, in the 1300s during the Black Death, right? The church started putting it about that the Black Death, which wiped out a third of Europe's population, was the result of Jews poisoning wells. Yep. Okay? And countless, not countless, but there are numerous instances in recorded history of people at the prodding of their clergy basically rounding up the entire Jewish population of a particular town, nailing them all up inside a barn, and burning the barn down.
Yep.
Okay, so he's saying he doesn't see any evidence in history of the innate goodness of humanity under secularism. I don't see any particular evidence in history of religion doing it any better. And I see plenty of examples in history of atrocities attributed to the church.
Yeah.
There is a name that historians use for the period of world history when the church ruled everything. Yeah. And that's the Dark Ages. Yep. Okay? And there is a name for the period of history when the church's power began to be pushed to the back burner a little bit, and these more secular philosophies started taking hold, and people began thinking for themselves and discussing and debating ideas, and that's called the Enlightenment. And these names are what they are for a reason.
Yeah.
So, again, there's just these weird perversions of history to make it seem like Christianity is responsible for everything good in the world.
For all the good in the world, and it's all this evil secular humanists that are making it bad.
And again, how do you possibly get a moral belief system, a system that has any justification, okay, for saying this is the belief system under which all human laws and morals are based, when what is at the core of the belief system is this idea that anyone who isn't a member gets to burn forever in hell?
Yep.
Okay? What is at the core of Christianity is this demand for compliance backed up with threats of violence.
Yeah.
Okay? And I don't see how anybody can possibly claim that from that you get a moral belief system that's good for people. When really it's all about scaring the crap out of anyone by saying join or, turn or burn.
Yeah.
A moral belief system does not set this condition, join us or be subjected to eternity of torture. Okay, a moral belief system just doesn't set those conditions as a matter of course. Because that's just not the way morals are. It's nuts.
So, and we can close with this final quote from this guy.
Europe. You're just determined to keep me talking and ranting, aren't you?
Europe begat the modern-day humanist movement at the very same time we were founding a nation on godly principles.
What nation would that be?
That is why we are superior. And yes, we are.
What an arrogant prick.
Yep.
Yeah.
He is somebody I don't really care to meet.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And Christians call us offensive. They call us arrogant.
Yeah.
When this guy's saying, I'm better than you. We're better than anyone who doesn't agree with our belief system.
Yep. Just because we believe in the invisible man in the sky, and we are superior in every way.
Yeah, and they call us offensive.
Yeah.
Astonishing.
So.
Wow.
Well, you think that was offensive.
Give me more. I'm ready to just...
You think that was offensive, people?
Yeah, gloves are off now.
It hasn't even started yet.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Let's look at today's Statesman ad. Mm-hmm. There is a full-page ad in here, which you can zoom in on this travesty. It is by a group called Love One Out. It's being held at a church in town called Promised Land Church. They're the ones who actually did the virtual hell.
And you can read my report of that
exactly
on our website, on past events page.
Yep. Some say I'm dangerous, that my life is a lie. And then they go on to have a little discussion down here. Yeah. But it's basically saying that Let's actually...
just give us a short version. What's the pitch here?
Of course. As a teen and young adult, this is the man in the picture, I felt trapped in homosexuality. My high school guidance counselor convinced me I was born homosexual and that there was no other option for me. A caring Christian...
What high school was this? I thought guidance counselors were there in high school to give you job advice. Yeah, what's it?
A caring Christian told me that Jesus Christ could heal me. I came to understand the Bible is clear. God never intended me to be homosexual. Although the journey is difficult.
Okay, then why are there homosexuals, right? I mean, Christians make this claim that God designed everything.
Yeah.
Everything is the result of God's grand plan. Yeah. If God doesn't intend for people to be homosexuals, why are some people homosexual?
That's a really good question, Martin.
You know, is it Satan? If it's Satan, how is Satan possibly able to do anything that God doesn't want him to do unless he's more powerful than God? Hello? Go on, please. I told you, man, gloves are off. I mean, just throw a brick at my head if I just interrupt you too much, okay?
They say our desire to choose a life apart from homosexuality is a lie, and that to convey our message to others is dangerous. But how can my story be dangerous? Mm-hmm. They say science doesn't back our claims. But how can they deny my experience? How can they deny one person's experience? Well, that's easy.
Well, you know, one person's experience is not necessarily going to be every person's experience.
Exactly.
Okay. You know,
so essentially, what this is it's a very specific time and place. Mm-hmm. You go here, and they
charge a hefty admission, which we can't tell you about.
Exactly. It's fairly large. They will cure your homosexuality. They'll fix you.
And do you get your money back if they don't?
I would expect probably not. We could check on that, but I'm doubting it.
Yeah, that would be interesting to call. Call them up and say, if I walk out of your seminar and I'm still gay, just as a prank. Okay, now here's the thing.
Yeah.
I've never...
Is it money back guarantee?
Okay, several reasons why I've never understood this whole fundamentalist fear of homosexuality. First off, what a precise... Okay, I can understand why some people would find just the act tasteless, okay?
Yeah.
As a straight man, I find the idea of gay sex tasteless, but that doesn't make me turn against homosexuals.
Yeah.
It's just something I'm not inclined to do.
Personally, I'm not going to.
But why be against these people? I know that they have their little agitprop that says this isn't an anti thing, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, what are these Christians necessarily afraid of? Are they afraid that if homosexuals are just accepted and welcomed and nobody considers it a big deal, do they think that that's going to be a threat to heterosexual relationships? Do they think that if gay people are just allowed to be, not persecuted and treated with dignity and sexual preference just isn't an issue anymore, do they think that, that they won't be allowed to have their marriages and their families and their children?
Yeah.
Do they really think that? What do they think is the threat to them just by homosexuals not being, targeted all the time? What's the fear there? I've never gotten it. Because, it's like I said, you could put me in some seminar with 10,000 gay people.
Yeah.
Not one of them is ever going to, even if they were inclined to do that, not one of them is going to persuade me to become gay.
Yeah. Because
I'm just not like that. So I don't see how you could persuade a gay person to become straight unless they're bisexual to begin with, which is probably the case of this guy. So I've just never understood this weird, paranoia about gays and they're looking behind bushes and they're going to pounce.
Yeah,
and
I've
never comprehended that. I mean, why be afraid that a gay person can make you gay unless you're harboring doubts about
unless you're doubting it yourself in the first place.
Unless you've got insecurities about your own sexuality.
Yeah. And now to bust the irony meter completely out of whack.
This ought to be fun.
I went to their website for this Love One Out, just to try and get a little more on what was going on. And I found this choice paragraph. At the Love One Out conference, you'll hear from experts on homosexuality. Learn how to respond to the misinformation.
Experts?
Learn how to respond to the misinformation in public school system.
Wouldn't an expert on homosexuality be homosexual? I mean, you think.
Change public opinion and much more. But mostly, you'll be reminded of the power of love and how it will always win out over fear, hate, or ignorance. Now, I would ask them, what's driving the conference if it's not... What was that again? Fear, hate, or ignorance?
Yes.
It's all three that's driving
It's in this bizarro backwards world of fundamentalism where fear, hate, and ignorance equals we really love you and we want to help you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Logic and well-defined arguments have never won the heart. Such persuasive conversations on the truth of homosexuality have often intrigued minds, but it is the love of God that transforms hurting hearts.
Okay, wait a minute.
In other words, logic doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Logic and science tells you that it's okay, it's normal, it's just, hey, it's another choice, you know.
And then
no
wait a minute,
deal.
didn't that also just say reasoned arguments about the truth of homosexuality?
Yes.
Are they then admitting that the people who disagree with them
have the
really
truth of
have the
homosexuality?
facts, but don't care what they say? Just follow your emotions.
Apparently, everyone else has persuasive conversations on the truth of homosexuality. They don't.
But we don't worry
What
about
other
that.
people do.
We're just there to work on your which
Exactly. The truth is something you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
It's not the answer you'd like.
Yeah.
We'll give you a different one.
Yeah.
It's complete bull, but we'll give you a different one.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. And again, of course, where's this being held?
this is in Austin, Texas, Promised Land Church.
Those same fine folks
That brought
who put on
virtual hell.
which was nothing but an exercise in exploitation and fear-mongering of the basest sort. I mean, I said when
Scare the bejesus out of you
Yeah.
and hope that you turn Christian.
and that's
So,
an interesting statement. But again, it's so we know that these are the kinds of folks again who don't care about reasoned arguments of things.
Yeah.
We found that out in the parking lot. You can read my report, by the way, Virtual Hell. If you go to the website and past events page, you can find it there,
which is excellent.
It's interesting. But yeah, so we know that these are people who are just who just want to go out there and shock you, and then get you when you're emotionally vulnerable and get their hooks into you. That's how they work.
Yep.
In other words, it's precisely the sort of activity that they accuse homosexuals of. Working in the bushes and waiting till you're vulnerable. But crazy.
Yeah.
So it'll be very interesting to see the letters of the editor that come into the Statesman.
I would really like to see what kind of, because I mean, this is a full-page ad on the Sunday Statesman.
Well, what do you want?
That can't be cheap.
What do you want to bet that an organization like GLAAD or one of those groups comes up with a reply very fast? Maybe their own full-page ad. Stay tuned for further developments, kids. Amazing.
So that is just horrible.
I know. Yeah, this is Austin. I know lots of people who are gay and lesbian.
Yeah.
Some of whom are very, very good friends of mine. We never talk about sexual preference and stuff. They're never sitting there trying to go, Martin, you've got it all wrong. Come on over to our side. They're not there trying to persuade me. They're just, there's nothing about them as people that's the least bit abnormal. They just have a different sexual preference. Doesn't affect how they live the rest of their lives. Doesn't affect their job performance. Doesn't affect their character as people.
Yep.
They're certainly less inclined to, these weird bigoted prejudices that the fundamentalists are inclined to.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to talk about morals,
let's look, shall we?
Wow.
So,
wacky, crazy world that we live in still, people.
Yep.
Boy.
That's all I've got today, thankfully.
Why?
So,
man, you got me riled up, didn't you? This was a more riled than usual Wagner episode.
Yeah, they got more morons out there.
Well, that's what we're having fun with. Okay, gonna go to viewer emails now, and and then in a second we'll go ahead and put the phone number up on the screen. This is a live call-in show, so give us a piece of your mind if you feel like. But also, again, we have a new feature on the show, viewer emails. Thing is, a lot of people watch this program. A lot of people try to call us up. We never get to everybody at the end of it, so we take viewer emails now. Every week we read the most interesting ones on the air. If you try to call us, you can't, you can't get through at the end of the show, or some people are shy about calling and getting on the air. Send us a question. That address is atheistexp@yahoo.com. Keep it brief and to the point. If it's interesting, we'll answer you and read you on the air. And here is our first letter for this week from a fellow named Taylor, who writes us, "Hey guys, I just saw your show for the first time this past Sunday. I guess that'd be last week. I just wanted to say thank you for starters. Finally, something is on public access to counter these annoying religious programs. I can't wait to see the next show." Well, thank you, Taylor. We're here to help. Anyway, he says, he wants to know, anyway, I was wondering what the basic atheist response is to theists to explain evolution by saying that God created evolution. Obviously, I disagree with this standpoint and have my reasons, but I was wondering if you guys could make any arguments against it that I haven't already thought about. For one, I think if you believe in evolution, you can't logically believe that the Earth has only been around for a few thousand years. especially if you know anything about carbon dating. Then again, I've heard of arguments about interpretations of the Bible that basically say that when God created the world in 6 days, that these days weren't literally days like we think of days, but instead they span many, many years. I personally see this as another bogus attempt to make sense of discrepancies between the Bible and reality, and Taylor, you would be right. See, the problem with, when people say that God created evolution, what you're hearing are folks who are not the kinds of strident fundamentalists who think that, I must take a strictly literal interpretation of the Bible, and that includes denying all science that comes into conflict with that. So you do find a lot of Christians who in their own way, find ways to reconcile their religious faith with what science tells us and is able to present evidence for. But as far as a scientific statement is going, they're not making one, right? All they're doing is they're making a religious statement about their own beliefs, and they're doing it in a scientific context, and some people might think that that might make their religious beliefs scientific. But instead, all they're really doing is trying to come up with this reconciliation. The problem with God created evolution as a scientific statement, just like God created anything else, is that God as a concept, the reason science ignores God is because any scientific proposal or theory or hypothesis or what have you has to meet a certain set of criteria in order to be taken seriously as a scientific basis. And one of those criteria would be falsifiability. Come up with a proposition, this idea. In order to determine whether or not that proposition is true, you have to just simply be able to think up ways in which it would be false. And then you go out and you do examinations. And if none of the falsifications that you've come up with actually falsify the proposition, then you have a strong proposition that has held up to your attempts to falsify it. And you can go ahead and then, take it seriously as a strong scientific theory. Okay, a case in point, simple one. The sun rises in the east. Okay. Now, that's falsifiable in many ways. If the sun rose in the north, or if the sun rose in the west, or if the sun rose in the south, or if the sun didn't rise at all, it simply sat there at high noon forever and didn't budge, then those would be ways in which the statement, the sun rises in the east, could be falsified. Okay. But all of our observations show us very clearly sun rises in the east. So none of those prospective falsifications falsify the statement sun rises in the east. Now, that's a real simplified example, but just for the sake of illustration, hopefully it makes sense. Now, God, on the other hand, is really tricky because, for example, in the intelligent design sphere, people who argue for the universe, we get guys who call the show all the time. It's like, clearly the universe is designed because of all the order. It's obvious. The problem is, well, now wait a minute. First off, how do you know what you're looking at is designed? I mean, sure, it's ordered. But can you necessarily say that that order is the result of a deliberate, intentional design? And besides, what's your frame of reference? Okay. Design is one of these terms, that in order to even have a concept of what it means, you have to have an idea of what it means for something to be not designed. Because when you say, this appears to be a designed thing, well, what do you mean? Compared to what? What would be something non-designed that I can look at the two and say, of these two, this is the designed thing? Just like hot and cold. Okay? I mean, in order to understand what cold means, like
you
the
have
studio.
To know hot.
You have to you have to just have a concept of not cold. It's like, it's cold today compared to August. Okay?
And look at that design. If you have, let's say, a 6-sided die and you roll that 100,000 times, you're going to find that the number of ones that came up and the number of 2s and 3s through 6s are pretty close. Is that design? No, it's just that's how it works.
But even so, where this gets us back to a God not being falsifiable is that, you say you approach someone who's an intelligent design advocate and say, well, give me an example of what the universe would look like if it weren't designed by a God. And if they're able to give you an example at all, a lot of times they won't. I've found they won't give you. They don't have one. But let's say, in our universe, we know that things work certain ways just based on what they are. Like a cat will give birth to kittens. A cat will not give birth to a baby elephant. So if we had a universe in which cats gave birth to baby elephants and acorns, instead of growing into oak trees, they grew into Chevrolets, and if rain fell at an upside-down 30-degree diagonal slant one day and then a different slant the next day, would that be a non-designed universe because everything's chaotic and makes no sense? And if they say yes, you can catch them out right away. Because you can simply say, well, wait a minute, though. How do you know that a universe that looked like that wasn't the designed result of a God who was either insane or just a big joker? You know?
Got a good sense of humor.
I mean, there's no real way that you can come up with falsifying any sort of invisible supernatural reason for something.
Yeah.
You know? And so because it can't be falsified, that doesn't mean it's automatically considered true. It just means that it's not even really something you can study.
Yeah.
And if you just can't even study the concept, then if it's not scientifically verifiable one way or the other, it's not even worth the consideration.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say in result to that. It's God created evolution is simply Christians who are reconciling their religious beliefs with science, and they're just making a religious statement that, that's trying to reconcile how they feel about science. Okay, went on for a while with that, but that's... Okay, we've had a series of email exchanges with a fellow named Stephen, who's a creationist, and these started out kind of testy. They've gotten less testy. He demanded a whole bunch of evidence for stuff, and he's actually reading it. I sent him links to talk origins and things like that. And he's like, well, this is all pretty good, and it's interesting. I still have some questions. And so if he's reading it and is receptive to it, I think, kudos to him. But early on, the testy letters started out because we kind of hammered him. Well, he, critiqued Jeff D. last week on the show because Jeff is a big old meanie. And, he and Jeff have had their own exchanges. But I hit him back with, he responded. In his very first letter, he said, I'm a Christian, but I don't assume to have all the answers, nor would I be able to prove God to you. He said, my belief is based on faith. And then he went on to say this, which is what I took exception to. If you're looking for proof, then you missed the point. God has given you the proof. Well, that's a typo. It is up to you to believe and not look for evidence. Okay, that's just irrationalism. Okay, if you have this belief system that you hold in such a way to where you say, and to even look for evidence for the thing you believe in is wrong. Okay, that's just blanket irrationalism. In fact, it's so irrational you can have no basis for it. You could say, well, if I have an invisible 7-foot-tall bunny rabbit under my bed, and I believe that on faith. And I don't need to look for evidence because it's just up to me to believe and not look. You have no guidelines for anything that you can possibly lay claim to. And so, he took umbrage at being called irrational, and then we explained it to him, and then we've since had a dialogue, and so this will continue, but at least he seems to be, now we have to explain to him, look, the reason we've called you ignorant and irrational is because he was making statements about science that weren't true. That were, inaccurate statements, and saying, look, if you don't want to be, called ignorant, you should not reflect, say things that are of an ignorant nature. But anyway, so that will probably continue. But, thanks as always to Stephen for watching and responding and what have you. And finally, before we get to the calls, and we're getting some callers lined up, here's funny. We got some spam. But this is from some Christian organization. They call themselves Sound of David. And this is funny. They want to know if we're prophets. Are you a prophet? They ask. Are you really a prophet is the subject line. And then they go on to say that they're this group of guys who are putting together some sort of tabernacle-style worship center in Kingsport, Tennessee, which will be a house to host, restore, encourage, and equip prophetic people by impacting spiritual gifts. And
wow, so is this like a seminar you can go and learn to be a prophet?
Evidently, yeah.
Cool.
But then I'm just amused.
We sent delegates from the atheist community of Austin.
So I'm just amused by just some of the language of this is really funny. Like this is spacey. See if you can make sense of this. The prophetic gifts will not work in the tradition of man, but will work in the third dimension, which is the power of God.
What? The third.
Yeah,
the third dimension?
I said something much the same thing there, Ashley. Every gift will manifest at this level. 99.9% of the current organized church does not experience this level of manifestation of the power of God.
Yes, they're all two-dimensional.
Because we have the better shrooms, evidently. This controlling spirit will never let you fully flow in the anointing and will always try to shut you down and not let you worship God all the way. This is why these special people go to the wilderness to flee from the bitter bondage of Pharaoh.
Pharaoh? Who's this Pharaoh now?
Okay, this guy's just living in the land of Middle Earth. Yeah, it's just wow. But it's just sort of... and then there's a break here where I guess the nurse came in and gave him his meds. And then we go to finally down here, he says, again, this 99% thing, he's really definite about this figure. 99% of high-level Christians are stuck in the second dimension. Oops. How would you like to get 10,000 gigabytes of Revelation downloaded? Well, just...
Not on my modem connection.
Yeah. Revelation cannot bring you manifestation. You get to go into the third level to experience manifestation. Wow. Well, this just sounds trippy as all get out. And, it's just one of the things that makes being an atheist so doggone fun in this world. But anyway.
Yes, because we live in the fourth dimension.
Yeah. That's mail. And at the end of the show, we'll give you that email address again for viewer mail. It's callers time, and we have Edward on line 1. So let's see what he has to say about all of this business. Hey, you're on the air.
Hi, guys. Love the show.
Thank you.
I just want to make the point that you guys discuss constantly try to contradict Catholicism, and I think we all kind of know that Catholics are kind of ignorant. I'd rather hear you guys discuss our views on social issues and topics.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, I'll tell you why. Well, first off, we critique hopefully all perspectives that we get, whether it's from Catholicism or Protestants or what have you, that we think are inaccurate and grossly distorted and just wrong. I'm reluctant to get I'm reluctant to speak for all atheists, though, on all points of view. Okay, because remember, atheism is just like you don't believe in God. That's all that makes you an atheist. And if our internet mailing list is any indication, atheists will argue amongst themselves heatedly about any other number of subjects.
Yes,
so
my views on several issues are apparently not held by many in the group. Don't understand it.
We have, we have atheists who are liberals, and we have atheist conservatives, and we have atheist, libertarians, and we have atheist vegetarians, and we have atheists who are very, very heatedly against the upcoming Iraq war, and we have some other atheists who aren't necessarily as against it. And so I'd be reluctant, unless you have a specific issue that you were thinking of, to say, this is what atheists think about this, that, or the other. Do you understand why?
Yeah, but it doesn't do us any good as a group. We're not going to grow as a group if we can't tell people what we're about. I don't think people understand what atheists are about.
Yeah.
And we all agree, we know what it's about. But there aren't many of us. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I would like you to go ahead and maybe give me an example of something that you'd like to hear us talk about on the show. But I'll just list as an example, though. There are, generally speaking, I think you could say that most atheists do see eye to eye on church-state separation issues. And so, for example, in that realm, we have, as a group, taken public stances on those types of issues. We had several delegates from our group go to Washington back in November when they did the Godless Americans March, which was a whole bunch of atheists from around the country and various different groups and individuals coming together to say, hey, we need to make sure that the rights of all Americans, including unbelievers, are treated fairly, and you don't just give special favors to the religious. So there are certain issues where we do, where it's pretty much safe enough to say, atheists see eye to eye on this as a body, and we'll make a public stance on that. But if there are others that you think we haven't addressed, then I'd love to hear what they are, and we'll give it a shot.
Nothing specific I can think of right now.
Yeah.
But I just want to make the point that religions have us on the defensive, and it doesn't do us any good just to.
Well, that's true.
You know what I mean? It's a tough fight, but let's try to talk about our issues more and try to get people to understand what our opinions are.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. That's an excellent point. We certainly try not to allow ourselves to be put on the defensive on this show. But when you consider that it's only been within the last century or so, maybe a couple of centuries, that it has, been possible for atheists to simply come out publicly and say, I don't believe in God, without being faced with stuff like blasphemy laws, without fear of being imprisoned for it. Atheism as, the very idea of just atheists getting together is pretty recent. So it's still a very new thing, and it'll take some time, I think, for us for atheists as a body to make a unified political front or socio-political front on given issues, but I think it'll come with time. I think that as shows like this serve as an outreach to, atheists out there in the general public to let them know, hey, this is okay, and, come on together and let's try to, do what you suggest. Find areas where issues that we can come together on, and then propose those.
My other question was this.
Yeah.
You guys have on the internet site, I haven't been to it, is there a dating service on there for atheists?
I know of a few. Let me see. There's.
We have a link to, I think it's like Atheist Singles or something like that, one of the Yahoo groups. But I think there's like 5 people on there.
I mean, now you want to talk about new things. That's still not something that's really caught on yet. But I know there's secularsingles.com. I think there's atheistsingles.com.
Tell me this.
But I've never used one. So
tell me this. Do you have any idea what portion of minorities are atheists, or have you had discussions with minorities yourself?
Do you mean like racial minorities, like African Americans?
Yeah. How does it compare whites to blacks and Hispanics?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know anything about numbers specifically. I know it's lower typically, but in terms of 10% versus 5% or whatever, I don't know anything like that.
I think that there are probably the majority of people who are atheists and who are outspoken about it. You might tend to find would be Caucasian. I don't know what that would be representative of the general population. I don't know, for example, what percentage of African Americans or Latinos would be atheists compared to otherwise. I would assume it would be lower in some of the racial minority groups, simply because, for example, like the Hispanic community and Latin community have a very strong, like Catholic tradition, for example. African Americans have a very strong religious tradition, but then so do the whites. So I really don't know what the racial breakdown is.
I have got a question for you on a specific topic.
All right.
Our public schools are usually pretty poor. In your opinion, would you send your kids to a private school, a religious school, if you knew it was a better education?
Well, Ashley, you start.
It would really depend on the school specifically. If it's one of these that, demands that you have a prayer before the day and then at every homeroom and then, it was just very pervasive. I would have issue with that. I don't have kids, so it's hard to put myself in that position. It would be a tough call.
Yeah. Hopefully
I'd be able to move overseas.
Some of our members are parents. Maybe they'll call and answer you. I'd be, if I had children and I was confronted with a public school system that was hopeless, I would be reluctant to send my children to a private school that in which the religious practice was overt and it was part of the curriculum. Like there was mass every morning and a benediction or a devotional as part of the curriculum. Wouldn't want to do that. But there are some, but if there were, just some private school that happened to be called Saint So-and-so's, but it was not run in such a way to where any kind of religious practice was obligatory, and, the educational standard was known to be really, really high. If I checked it out and thought, like you said, on an individual basis it was okay, then I wouldn't have as, a problem with it.
Yeah. And homeschooling is an option. It's certainly not the easiest one out there. But it is another option that I know some people in our group are actually considering. And so how that would work out, I don't know. Like I say, that's a lot of work.
Yeah. I think parenting would be hard enough work without throwing homeschooling into the pot. But
yeah.
So there you go.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks a lot for your call and for watching. We'll talk to you soon. All right. Yeah, tricky business.
Yeah.
The reason that there is objection to, of course, religious practice in the public schools is not just for the constitutional matter that a government institution can't support or advocate any sort of religious practice, but then I think there's just a basic matter, which is that the religious instruction of a child should be the responsibility of the parent.
Yeah.
It's not the government's business to stick their nose into that little part of the parenting process and say, we're going to have Christian prayers at this public school.
Yeah.
And if you happen to be a Jewish or a Muslim or an atheist or a Zoroastrian parent, well, too bad. Yeah. Write a note to your child and have him bring it to the teacher saying he's allowed to abstain from the prayer.
Yeah.
And he'll get to sit there and be the object of ridicule once everyone realizes that he's the one child remaining seated during that's why that can't happen.
Yeah.
Again, it's the government trying to intrude in the rights of parents, and that's a serious problem.
Implying that parents don't know how to raise their kids and teach them correctly, so we're going to have to do it for them.
Rightola. Okay, Joe's online too. Let's see what he has to say. Hey, you're on the air?
Hello.
Hi. You're up. What's up? What's going on?
Hi. How's it going?
Fine.
I was wanting to know the transformation from an agnostic to an atheist.
Well, I never made that I made a transition from Christian to atheist. I think that I would describe myself, though, as both an agnostic and an atheist right now. It's agnosticism and atheism are terms that refer to two different things. Like agnosticism refers to what you think you know or you don't know or you can't know. And atheism is all about not believing, just like theism is belief. So belief and knowledge, it's like refers to two different things. So you could have somebody who's agnostic, says, I admit I can't prove there's a God and I don't know if there is one, but then they're not atheists, they're theist. They're like, even though I can't prove one, I choose to believe there's some higher power. We talk to people like that all the time.
But is there a certain step process that you can take to make that transformation?
Oh, I don't think. Well, it's like, I think it would just be personal. It would have to do with your own personal feeling. And see, like I said, I'm both agnostic in that I admit I don't know if a God exists, but I'm atheist because I choose not to believe based on what I think is a major lack of evidence.
See, I'm an agnostic, and I'm trying to work my way towards being atheist, and I just want to progress at the right pace.
Well, we can actually kind of figure it out right now. Well, how do you're agnostic, you admit that you don't know if a God exists, and you can't prove one way or the other. Would that be a fair assessment?
Sure.
Okay. Now, how do you go about the decisions you make in your day-to-day life? Do you do it on the basis of, maybe there's a higher power up there who will judge me based on what I do? Or do you just go through your life indifferent to the whole very idea? Like, the possible consequences of a God, what a God might think of the way you live your life and the stuff you do and the decisions you make is just not a thing you think about.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, just think it over first. Is
there anything in between?
Well, not really. Like I said, it's two different things. If you don't know, that tells me that you're probably, I think that if you were thinking all the time about, gee whiz, well, if I do such and such a thing and there is a God, then there might be problems, and so that I shouldn't do it. If you're not thinking like that, well, if you were thinking like that, I think you'd know about it. So if you don't know, that probably means you're not thinking about it, and you're already sort of leaning towards atheism as opposed to theism.
Oh.
So I'd say you're agnostic, and the side of the fence you're swinging on.
Okay, so I'm probably a couple years away then?
Well, I don't think there's a guideline, dude. But, like I said, it's a personal deal. It's all just going to be how you make up your mind about it. It's a personal thing. There's no list of rules on a cereal box saying, here's how to be an atheist.
Okay. Well,
all it means is that you just don't believe. There's no real complicated process to it. All right?
Well, and what's your take on atheism with Renaissance festivals?
But I don't have one.
There's no atheist consensus. Lack of a belief in God doesn't say anything about whether or not you like, dressing up in middle-aged costumes.
Although one of our folks, a small group of our folks, did go to the last Ren Fest, and one of our absentee producer, Russell Glasser, wore this great bishop's outfit. So he looked terrific in it. So we're trying to get him to wear it all the time now.
Okay, I was just asking because of the pagan connotations with it and how that played into it.
Well, I think that the people who go to I think the people who go to the Ren Fest, at least like in our group, we don't take that seriously. That's just part of the whole entertainment aspect of it. Yeah. It's just like a form of, it's just fun. Don't think of it in a serious way.
So the casting spells doesn't play any factor.
Well, since we don't believe that casting spells does anything, it's just part of entertainment. It's like Lord of the Rings, right? They have wizards and hobbits and magic stuff, but it's entertainment,
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling.
Interesting. Yeah, I wish that we, there's not like, it's not like going up to the altar call at church and saying, here's the profession of faith you have to make, and then you get baptized and dunked in the water. There's not like a process like that to become atheist. It's just...
Yeah, but we've been working on getting that cereal box, step-by-step thing, but haven't got it nailed down yet. So.
What would be a good name for an atheist cereal? Yeah.
Don't know. I have to think about that one. We'll have a report next week on our cereal boxes. Atheist cereal boxes.
Okay, I think Manda's online one. Let's see what she has to say. Hey,
we're the atheists who stay crunchy in milk.
There we are, yes.
Well, I heard your reply and a little bit on Stephen, who's the caller last week.
Oh, yeah.
He was asking about whether or not you or Ashley or Jess believed that evolution was like an explosion
in the print shop,
putting together a fully formed copy of a book.
No. There was that was a different caller, and then Stephen wrote the letter saying. Oh, it wasn't an analogy; it was a description. That's what Stephen wrote in the letter.
Okay.
And then what he wrote to me was also. And then he also tried to say, okay, like a tornado in a junkyard assembling a 747. And are like, that is an analogy, and it's still inaccurate. So
all analogies break down at some point. Whether or not something's a good analogy is, are the relevant points accurate?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's not good grounds to shoot down the print shop analogy by saying we're not made out of paper. It is a good way to shoot it down to say, the process isn't like that. I think our educational system, private and public, has let us all down.
Yeah.
And it isn't hard to find a better analogy.
Yeah.
Two of the analogies I like are video slots, where it has buttons by the reels, and you can push a button and spin again, keeping the ones
slot machines.
Yeah.
I was thinking like PCI slot in my computer for like a video card or something.
Some of them have it.
Yeah, okay.
The feature, it's the hold feature.
Okay.
And some of the features that get perpetuated aren't the features that they're going to be when they're combined with other things. Yeah. Like you might get a pair or three of a kind, and later you kept that pair or that three of a kind, and you get a full house, and that's worth even more.
Right.
Yeah.
So the print shop analogy fails because it doesn't all happen at once.
Sure. Yeah.
And I've heard a similar analogy to finding a watch on a beach.
Yeah. Again, that gets back to what's your frame of reference for design? Yeah. When you say you find a watch on a beach and say, oh, that appears to be a design thing, what are you comparing it to?
Yeah. Well, I used to like to make big bonfires, and I'd find a stick on a beach that was just good with two prongs on the end. And a great thing for roasting weenies on the fire. And later on, it became part of
that's your godly weenie stick
for kids.
But I find though that
not done all at once.
Yeah.
And also, there's an important factor to point out too, which I mentioned last week actually, is that certain things like biology are governed by chemistry. Certain chemicals bind together, certain don't. When you get certain chemicals, you get this little self-fulfilling, cycle thing going on. And it's not completely random. Atoms just don't bump into each other and they always stick or they always bounce apart. It's governed by laws. And so...
Yeah, I've always found that when creationists do try to use these kind of wonky analogies to illustrate what they think evolution is all about, I've always found that a better response, rather than just give them a different analogy that might be better, but ultimately you end up in this big sea of analogies that can cause a confusion. It's always easier to just explain to them how it really works. Just like, for example, natural selection isn't simply about chance, because although chance might play a role in what mutations happen, the process of natural selection is that the mutations that happen that are advantageous to the organism end up belonging to the organisms who are able to thrive and prosper because it's an advantageous mutation. Yeah. Mutations that happen that are disadvantageous usually will lead to that organism not being able to compete. And so that's how natural selection works. So it's not just pure randomness and it's not just chance. Yeah. It is a set of definite factors where selection is working upon advantages that the organism has that other organisms don't, which allow that organism to then go on to the next generation. So if you can just give them a summary of what the real process actually is, then saying, okay, well, it's not really like a tornado in a junkyard. It's more like,
something else.
Yeah, a Teletubby and a Nerf ball and some, or whatever, right? I mean, it's just tell them how it really works. Just give it to them in the Reader's Digest form, and I find that they'll actually listen to that. You're cutting out, Manda. Yeah, are you on your mobile?
Yes, I am.
Okay, because you're cutting out now and again. Oh, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish up, and then we're gonna. Yeah.
Okay. We were talking about other issues. One of the issues I think we have is whining about those darn religious people. It's critical thinking, like how to handle analogies in debate. And
good point.
I think that to privatize education, it would be less efficient. The reason we have schools and public schools is it costs less. The trouble with the voucher system is that it assumes that the money you're paying out is your child's share. If that was true, then every person with no children ought to get a voucher right now. And what you're really paying for is not your child's share of 2 children. What you're paying for is your share of all the children in the city. Which means that if you were to get a voucher, a fair voucher would be
I'm sorry.
3,000.
Okay, you say that again, Manda. You broke up. A fair voucher would be what?
A fair voucher would be 1/3,000th of your $300 that you pay in taxes for.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Oh, interesting. You know, the whole voucher thing is sort of fraught with problems. But then again, if it weren't for the fact that you're right about the public schools being cheaper and more efficient in that regard. But of course, at the same time, that has led to sort of the crisis in public education that has allowed advocates of vouchers to gain headway with their proposal. You know, because one of which, for example, is that you know, because of the cheapness of public schools, teachers in the public schools aren't paid jack.
Yeah.
So we're not getting the best and the brightest in our culture, in our education system, you know, getting their PhDs and their masterses from college and saying, I want to go and teach in high school now. They're not doing that because there's no money in it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we don't pay our public school teachers enough, you know, as much as garbage men.
Yeah.
And so when you have that problem, you know, what do you do then? Is it more cost effective to fix something that's already broken, or to maybe just say let's tank the whole thing and start something new from scratch? It's that is a dicey issue. But of course, the worry, yeah.
Well, I'd like to say I didn't think the public schools were that bad. That's my personal opinion right now.
Yeah. Well, in good neighborhoods, there, yeah.
There are a lot of private schools that have very screwy education as well. There are some private schools deeply religious, but also give very competent life instruction.
Yeah.
You know?
But then you like the whole problem, of course, with when you hear critics of the public schools, right? They're almost always talking about like urban inner city public schools that have a large minority student body. And, you know, the nice public high schools out in places like Westlake Hills, it's true, you don't hear complaints about the quality of education in those public schools. So now we're into a whole new topic of economic disparity and racial disparity and social disparity and what have you.
And this goes back to what are atheist issues and what do atheists think about things, because I disagree with a lot of that.
Yeah.
I happen to think that privatization of education would be a good idea. But then again, this is the atheist experience, which deals with lack of God. And so rather not get into that too deeply on here.
Well, but Mark Lowy is another one of our members, the guy who has a House Bill 689 up now before the state legislature, where he has this wonderful plan for cheap, low-cost textbooks that students in grade schools and high schools would be allowed to keep at the end of the year.
Exactly.
And have to refer to next year when they get their next, and so on and so forth, which is what goes on in these countries like our pals Korea, who have very, very high math and science educational standards, while we're at the bottom of just about every developed nation in the world.
In terms of math and science, we don't know what we're talking about.
So Mark
in public schools.
But Mark is a guy who supports vouchers.
Yeah.
And he has his own reasons.
He also supports vouchers as part of a system with other checks and balances, not just vouchers alone.
That's true.
Certainly not vouchers as they're being put forth through Congress right now.
Which is designed as another religious.
There are other ways to do things, but there have to be other things that go with it too.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you're right. So there is a way to do vouchers right. It does appear that the way that the Bush administration would like to do vouchers is as part of this lovely religious entitlements program that they have that allows prisoners the keys to their own jail cells. But you're right. You know, so maybe there's, again, it's something that needs a heck of a lot more debate. But, you know, like there's no one atheist point of view on it, though.
Exactly.
But anyway, anything else, Amanda? Or are we going to go on to...
No, that's it. Thanks for me. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks a lot. And release. And again, next, people calling us on their mobiles, which, again, if that's all you have access to, fine. But sometimes we do get these dropout problems, and it's hard to hear. So if you can call us from a landline, usually works better. But we'll take your calls however we get them, and that includes this next call from Jacob. Hey, what's going on? Thanks for waiting.
That's okay.
What's up?
I don't really know much about atheism, but I need to ask, do atheists celebrate any holidays, or is it like, can they celebrate any holidays?
A lot of us actually celebrate a lot of the same holidays everybody else does. I mean, Christmas, New Year's, and I mean, there are a lot of secular holidays like New Year's. Yeah. And then even things like Christmas and stuff like that, some people do to a certain extent. And hey, it's a time that I get off of work. I can go home and see family. That's a good thing. That's something to celebrate. Go home and see family for a couple of days. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So even if I don't, sit around and go to church and, say, my God, Jesus was born this day, 2,000 years ago. I still got to see family.
Yeah. Atheists, we like to say that we don't need a set date on our calendar to choose to celebrate something. Every day is worth celebrating for us. But it is true that, like, for example, two of the major religious holidays, Christmas and Easter, have become sufficiently secularized that you now, of course, have the religious Christmas and Easter for the Christians, and then you have Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny that allow people who don't belong to those religious traditions to celebrate those holidays if they feel like it. I personally don't do anything on Easter. I'm not interested in Easter. Christmas, I celebrate. I like to celebrate what I consider the season because it's a holiday season, and I have fond memories of loving Christmas when I was a child. Yeah. And I'm still I'm still very close to my parents who are religious, and so I'll go up and see my folks for the Christmas holidays. I don't go to the service with them, but. That's up to the individual. What we do in our group is sometimes we'll have a winter solstice party, which is like the 20th, which is the changing of the seasons, and that's it might seem neo-pagan, but to us it's a natural event that occurs in the turning of the earth, and it's just it's not something we do seriously. It's just an excuse to have a party.
Yeah.
So but when you get right down to it, we don't think we need like a set calendar date to celebrate. We'll celebrate whenever we think that we feel like it.
Oh, and I also have to say, because I'm Catholic, and I thought this is a pretty good show. And I was going to say, and like speaking of Easter and stuff, I mean, because I learned from my pastor a couple of days ago that it wasn't necessarily a Catholic holiday or religious holiday. It was really having to do with the pagans.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of weird. I was wondering because I asked them why they give eggs and bunnies and stuff. And he said that they give rabbits because they said Easter was a pagan holiday for fertility. So they give rabbits because they're very fertile, and they give eggs because they represent fertility.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think he's very right about that.
And I can't remember exactly where it is. I have to look it up sometime. There are parts of the Bible that say don't do as the heathens do and put gold on your trees and stuff like that, talking about the Christmas tree.
That's right.
It is a blatant statement saying do not celebrate Christmas.
We'll have to find
in the way that people are celebrating it today.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah. I don't have any of the history of Easter here, but I do have some background on the early the celebration of Christmas. Eastern churches began to celebrate. I guess what became the Orthodox Church began to celebrate Christmas after the year 375. The church in Jerusalem started celebrating Christmas at the December 25th time in the 7th century. Ireland started in the 5th century. Austria, England, and Switzerland in the 8th century. The Slavic lands, Czech Republic and all that, the Balkans, in the 9th and the 10th centuries. Many symbols and practices associated with Christmas are of pagan origin. The holly, ivy, mistletoe, Yule log, the giving of gifts, decorated evergreen tree, magical reindeer, etc., etc. So there are pre-Christian traditions that have been adopted now in later centuries by the Christian Church. So everybody it all can be found to have some pagan roots if you look far back enough.
And I also learned a lot of other stuff like a lot of the weekdays, like Sundays for the sun, Mondays for the moon. I can't remember what Tuesdays for it, but it's mostly about Nordic gods, like Wednesdays for Woden's Day for the god Odin.
Yeah, Thor for Thursday.
Yeah, I think that's something right. Like that's sort of a Norse tradition there.
Yeah,
because of course the the Romans had entirely different names for their days and months, and the way they measured the week as well. Yeah. So it's interesting how just if you really trace the history back to see where our current present day religious traditions came from, you can find some surprising information out.
And that's the only thing I kind of don't like about my religion, Catholicism, is that in the Bible, it's always talking about the end of the world, the end of it, and I really don't even like that. I mean, I don't like the idea of it, and like through all the years, it's always been psychic. So the world's gonna end in 2000, but it didn't.
Yep, a lot of them were wrong.
And then I also read in like a textbook or something that I forgot, the Mayans or whatever, that they invented the calendar, and that they found it, and that they found the calendar had stopped at December 12th, 2012. And I had some family members who keep going on about that, like, oh, we're all going to die on December 12th.
I hadn't heard that one.
See, that's interesting. It may be, I'll have to read up on that. I think I've heard that that's something, because that's as far as they just calculated it.
Yeah.
Because that's several thousand years in the future from where they were anyway.
Yeah.
But you're right. A lot of these end-of-the-world prophecy Art Bell types are like, there's, again, it was back when Jeff D., I was a co-host of the show, and then a guy named Jeff D., who was our guest last week, was the host of the show. We were, from 1999 through the year 2000, on this show, every week, Jeff would have a feature called Rapture Report, which would be that week's predictions of the end of the world. And there were about 6 or 7 of them every week. And we just checked them off as they failed to come true. And, of course, the frequency of them slowed down as we got into 2001 to where we just don't bother anymore. But it just goes to show that all of these folks who are trying to use these ancient religious and superstitious texts to say, oh no, all this disastrous stuff is going to happen, the world's going to end on this and this date, and you need to get right with your Lord right now, and et cetera, like that. They're never right, they're always wrong, and it's clearly done for the purposes of scaring folks into the pews and filling those coffers. Yeah, that's what it's for. It's trying to get them, it's trying to get them into the church that way. But it's neat that you're, reading up on some of the history of this stuff.
And like my family members, you think that calendar thing, I always tell them they probably just got bored and gave up.
Yeah.
When you're looking that far in the future, you kind of tend to say, let somebody else figure it out later on.
Either that or the Spaniards were invading and they kind of had other things to attend to. It's like, got to put the calendar on hold while guys are throwing spears at me. So, anyway, but thanks for watching. And if you ever have any questions, just give us a call anytime. All right, man?
Yeah.
Take care.
See you later.
Yeah. So that's a well-thought young man. Reuben is next, is he not? Yeah. Line 3. We'll just keep it going. Hey, thanks for waiting.
Yeah, I just have a few questions.
Go right ahead.
First of all, how old were you when you decided to become an atheist, and what was like the huge, big main determining factor in your decision to do so?
I didn't have one. I was brought up Catholic. I actually went to church every week. My dad brought me. I always had doubts. I never really was all that convinced or sure of it. Always doubted it to some extent, but for the longest time, it just wasn't really that big of a deal in my life. I just kind of went around day-to-day life, didn't think about it. It wasn't really until I got to Austin and actually caught the show that I started, giving it some in-depth thought and really thinking about it. That in college, when I decided. But no, I was never really religious to any great extent.
Yeah, you'll find that, and my experience was similar. You'll find that atheists don't really have their version of, the road to Damascus moment, where you are deconverted in a flash of reason or what have you. It's usually like with me, again, just like Ashley, I was raised in a Baptist church, attended Sunday school all through my early adolescence. I was even on church choir, caterwauling in the back. Have many fond memories of my youth in this church and some of the youth activities we did. Had a lot of fun. But I just had questions. And as the years went by, my questions weren't getting satisfactory answers. And then I began to become turned off by some of the attitudes that I heard other people who are prominent religious figures having. This was like in the early 80s when guys like Falwell and Robertson were really starting to become, prominent in the media. And it was doubt piling upon doubt and questions not being answered. And then it wasn't really until I got into college and was maybe like around 2021 that I just decided I don't believe this stuff, So it was a process. It was a long process. Yeah. And we're here today still now to talk people, and it's who knows, one of you may call us up one day and give us a real whopper of an argument. So that's why we love doing this show, talking to guys.
Yeah, I have one last question. Mm-hmm. I was just wondering why people associate decorating a tree for Christmas with paganism. I mean, what's different from doing that and decorating your house as a result of throwing a party for your kid or something.
Well, I guess it really is no different in terms of, just the whole, your personal motivation as a Christian or a believer or whatever it is you practice. But simply from a historical standpoint, it's just you can look at pre-Christian pagan traditions and see that, like the Yuletide ceremony, this was a thing that was done at this time of year, and they did these things as part of their practice. And what happened was when Emperor Constantine made, validated Christianity by making it the official religion of the Roman Empire in the 300s, because the Roman Empire had absorbed all these other cultures into itself, it was so much easier to just go ahead and take the existing holidays and the existing traditions of celebration that were there and just adopt them. It's a lot easier to do that when you have several million people who are already doing all this fun stuff at the December 25th. To just let them keep doing it, and then you just incorporate it into whatever the new belief system is that is favored. So that's but in terms of like individual Christians decorating the Christmas tree, I'm not saying, we're not here implying that, you folks are secretly pagan and you don't know. No, I mean, it's not like that. We're just talking about it from a historical standpoint.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's it.
All right, man. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for your question. Okay, on we go, right? Jen is on line 1. We'll see what she has to say. Hey, you're on the air?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep. Sure can. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I've been reading a lot of different books about religion, and one thing that strikes me that may point to the existence of a God is life after death experiences and near-death experiences. Seems to be a cross-section of people, different economic levels and different educational levels, that when they die, they basically are ushered into the afterlife and judged, or either some of them told to come back on earth. And it's like it's always the same theme. And it seems to me, if there wasn't a God, that some people would see different things. They just wouldn't see the same thing. They wouldn't have a life review of their past events, and they wouldn't miraculous healings and things like that. If there wasn't a God, the ones that came back might have saw the Easter bunny or something like that, but they didn't. They saw. They were judged and everything, and I'm pretty sure you've probably read Afterlife, experiences, and I just wonder how you explain them, and that's my question.
Okay, and we'll give you some links too as well, and we do know that the current research on them does seem to be that they're neurological, that it does have to do with a certain brain chemistry acting in a certain way. A lot of the reason you do seem to see this cross-section of folks who are having similar experiences is because, if you think about it for a minute, you're hearing a lot of these experiences taking place in America or in Western cultures. You don't tend to hear about people, the Bushmen in Zimbabwe having similar experiences. It does tend to be, these kinds of experiences do tend to be reported from our culture. So if it seems as if they're very similar in nature, there's probably a lot of cultural filtering going on. But we do know for a fact that there is there's a part of the brain called the angular gyrus that allows that, if it's stimulated electrically, creates the sensation of not necessarily the near-death experience, but the out-of-body experience, where you have this dissociation from your body. And there have also been other, there are drugs that have been taken that have created similar effects, like the tunnel of light and things that you have to the near-death experience. So right now, a lot of research does seem to point to brain chemistry being the reason for these experiences, and cultural filtering being the reason why people who have these experiences come out of it and they think they've had this great religious experience. And a lot of people change their lives for the better, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does seem to be chemicals and not
it's also
magic beings.
Important to point out too that a lot of them don't. I haven't heard of very many, at least, that deal with being judged or seeing God or anything like that. It's a lot of them describe the tunnel of light and seeing people in that and stuff like that.
Yeah, feeling of contentment.
Exactly. I've seen a lot of that explained through basically how the brain works and how it is deprived of oxygen when you do die. It affects certain parts first and other parts later, and so you get this optic. It's affecting the optic part of the brain. So you got this big light, looks like a tunnel or something like that. So it's not really very specific. You're sitting there at a table and you've got God watching his videotape of your life. It's just tunnel of light and people. Yeah. Like say depriving the brain of oxygen can do some weird things.
Yeah.
I can tell you of one. I wonder if you ever read any of his books. His name is Dannion Brinkley.
Dannion Brinkley. We spoke about him. Someone called us on the show. A couple, maybe it was a month or so ago, asked about him.
Yeah.
And he's the guy who reported visiting angels and going to heaven, and predicting various, having the angels tell him about various future events that were going to occur.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it very revealing that when I checked out his book, it's interesting how his book is published in 1994, and the predictions that the angels give him are things like the collapse of the Soviet Union,
pre-94,
various inflationary, ups and downs of the economy, but a lot of events that took place pretty much prior to the time that his book came out. I find it very interesting that none of these angels whom he supposedly visited in his trip to heaven warned him about Oklahoma City, warned him about September 11th, warned him about the shuttle Columbia exploding. It's all of these predictions that took place conveniently prior to the actual publication of his book. My opinion of Dannion Brinkley, unfortunately, is that he's a guy who made up a bunch of stories to sell books. Now, does that prove that all near-death experiences are a bunch by phonies? No. But I think this guy isn't really to be taken seriously.
Well, he did predict in the future, in the 2000s, in the middle. I think it was late in the 21st century that doctors would operate without scalpels and stuff. That they would sense your vibrations and stuff and know what was wrong with you, that surgery would be a thing of the past. And he came back with the gift of himself of sensing people's vibrations and touching their hands. And
okay, but what sort of vibrations? How do you mean people's vibrations?
Well, he said that like when you're sick or troubled by something, you give off a vibration that he can pick up, that by touching you shaking hands with you, and he knows what's wrong with you and everything, or what kind of emotional problems may be in your life. It's in his second book that he wrote, and he talked about in the late 21st century that they would just eradicate all diseases, and that people would have, everybody would be healthy and have medical insurance and things like that.
Well, that would be great. Of course, I don't know that...
but it's also a kind of nebulous prediction about the future of technology.
And it's conveniently far away enough in the future to where no one can call him on it right now.
Yeah.
Now, we'll see if he's right, but I think that we'll actually eradicate a great many diseases before the late 20th century, but it'll be through detailed scientific research and not through people feeling vibrations, I'm sorry to say. But I appreciate your question. We're out of time for the show now. Thanks very much for calling. And I'm sorry. I just think Dannion Brinkley is a goofy man and a fraud, But right now, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, it's brain chemistry. I mean, there's reports of, different people suffering different types of brain damage.
Yeah.
And, there's a way that, I've heard of people suffering brain damage to where they can write their name, but they can write, but they can't read.
Yes.
That's weird. Like, you can write your name, but you can't read what you just wrote.
Yeah.
Strange.
I've seen the ones where if they look at something, if they have a ball on the table, they look at that, it doesn't comprehend. They can't tell you what that is. Yeah. They touch it and immediately they know exactly, that's a ball. It's round.
But just looking at it.
But looking at it, it just does not have that linkage in there.
Anyway, there's atheistexp@yahoo.com. Atheistexp@yahoo.com is our email address. Send us letters and queries and love notes and whatever have you. And like I said, every week we pick the 2 most entertaining letters that we receive and we read them out on the air. We are here every Sunday, 4:30. Reruns play Tuesdays at 4:30. Now, there's a good possibility that I might be out for a few weeks.
Okay.
Might be gone. Ashley will take over, and might not happen. If I'm here next Sunday, you'll know it didn't happen. But if so, I'll be back March the 16th. I'm sure the crew is so thrilled they can hardly stand it. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching. Here go our love rings out to Austin. Go to atheist-community.org to find out, once again, more about our group. Unbelievers, don't forget our bagel shop meetings. Theists, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. Bye-bye.